Do you guys hear that? It's the sound of global financial analysts and markets taking a deep breath and holding them in advance of the Fed statement being released today at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and the subsequent remarks 30 minutes later by Chairman Jerome Powell. The entire world seems to be watching and waiting for what the Fed is going to do to deal with inflation. I'm going to take a look at the Bitcoin chart and we're going to discuss how the Fed meeting may affect global markets and the Bitcoin market as a whole and look at some other news. Let's go. What is up, everybody? I'm Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of All Streets. Before we get started, please subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and hit that like button right down below. As I mentioned, everybody is watching and waiting to see what the Fed is going to say. As you can see in all markets, there's very little action. It seems that people are collectively holding their breath and waiting to see what is going to happen. First, I'm going to take a look at the Bitcoin chart very quickly, and then we can dive into the Fed meeting and what it means. First, as you can see here, we have the daily chart, not much doing. We do have rejection here at the 200 MA. That's that red line that a lot of people have been watching. Yesterday's candle and the candle the day before both wicked through and ultimately closed below. And today we're seeing a bit of bearish follow through, but not much to talk about and many hours left in the daily candle. As you can see, MACD has bounced nicely off the lows and continues to rise, which is generally considered a good signal. As you know, and I have talked about so many times, we got to get above 42,000 before starting to talk about any bullishness. And when you zoom in, there's a lot of resistance even higher than that. So people are talking about 45,000, 46,000, even 47,000 as lines that you would want to watch to show that we're having a bullish reversal. But we got to get above 42K first. That was the level where the move up from 20,000 inevitably ended before seeing the Tesla buy pushing it through that resistance. That was when Tesla bought $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. Now drilling in quickly to the 4-hour chart, as you can see, we are still in this large red range. Beautiful moves to get above the EQ. That's the equilibrium in the 50 MA. Struggling with the 200 MA here on the 4-hour chart. As you can see, we're bouncing right now from demand with potential tweezer bottoms, but who knows what this will be looking like by the time this video comes out. As you can see, still another strong rejection from this blue zone right here where price has been rejected so many times. This is all that resistance I'm talking about. 200 MA, this level, the 42K level, the top of this trading range on the 4-hour chart. There's so much resistance and we need to see serious volume and follow through. The good news is the longer you consolidate against resistance, the better it starts to look. We did not see a square rejection from this area, which is a bit encouraging. But again, the news is the Federal Reserve announcement, which is coming today, their policy update at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As you can see here on CNBC, the markets are on edge before the Federal Reserve's policy update in the face of surging inflation. The Federal Reserve is not expected to make any policy moves, but is likely to signal to the market that it is thinking about changing its bond buying policy. The Fed also releases new forecasts following its 2-day meeting Wednesday, and it could pencil in a first rate hike for 2023. And economists do not expect much detail on the tapering of the bond buying program, but they expect to hear it mentioned, and the Fed could discuss it more definitively later in the summer. First of all, let's just talk about how absolutely absurd this entire charade and soap opera is. Right? Markets, global markets, which are supposed to be free markets trading on supply and demand, are sitting here waiting to see what kind of tone one guy in the United States might take so that they can react today to something that will happen months or years down the road. What we know for a fact is that inflation is real. We saw a 5% increase from May to May, which is pretty tremendous when you know that the real rates and the real increase are much higher. Anyone who lives on Main Street and is living paycheck to paycheck is seeing the price of assets go up and the value of their dollar go down. You cannot hide that, and the numbers do not matter. But the stupidity of watching this meeting and it driving global markets should not be missed. I mean, look at what we're talking about here, right? Markets will go up if the Fed continues to commit to buying bonds and to more quantitative easing and to more printing and to more stimulus, which we know is all fake and manipulation. So yes, the markets will go up because we're going to print a whole bunch of money and inject it into the economy. The market will go down if the Fed even admits for one slight second that inflation is a problem and maybe they need to raise interest rates to deal with it. It's so stupid. It's such nonsense, and it's such not a free market. It's incredible. I mean, let's look at what they're talking about in this article. Start talking about it. And then there's a debate in this article about whether the Fed will start talking about interest rates and whether they're a problem and how that would affect the market. This is so dumb. It is so stupid. Inflation is real. They are going to continue printing money. The question is, how much will they print and for how long? So we all know what is coming. We all know inflation is real. And let's talk about the economy as a whole, right? I mean, what is the metric that people use to gauge whether the economy is doing well, right? Stimulus, it's growth. We talk about growth. We talk about job growth. But we know that everything that's happening in the world of technology is inherently deflationary. So we're printing money. We're doing all this stimulus with the idea of creating more jobs that will definitely be disappearing down the road when we see AI and technology taking those jobs. It's this endless hamster wheel that we're running on, and the game cannot be won. And at the end of the day, printing all this money and all this stimulus and all this inflation, it only helps rich people who are getting the benefit of all of that money printing, the people who own these companies, corporate socialism, crony capitalism. When the Fed steps in and buys bonds and buys stocks and stimulates these companies, it only helps the company and it hurts the people at the bottom who do not own hard assets that benefit from inflation. Will the Bitcoin market also react to the comments of this one man and whether he uses a certain tone or another tone or what happens? I don't know, but consensus seems to be that it will matter. Bitcoin enters wait and see phase ahead of Fed's statement. Wednesday's Fed policy statement is likely to see a binary market reaction. Now, I would love to say that Bitcoin is completely idiosyncratic. I personally believe that Bitcoin is a largely uncorrelated asset. Yes, it will react to these things in the short term, but in the long term, I believe that it moves on its own. And it is the only free market left because it has limited government intervention and exists because of actual supply and demand. But we do know that these macro things like COVID in March of last year can cause a risk-off environment for people to sell their Bitcoin in the short term. So let's see what people are talking about. Bitcoin is holding in a tight range as the focus turns to Wednesday's Federal Reserve's monetary policy statement, which could offer clues on the central bank's course of action and inject volatility into financial markets. The market is completely neutral ahead of the Fed with only a little spot buying. The event is likely to have a binary market reaction. According to Singapore-based QCP Capital, binary events are dramatic developments that trigger big moves in either direction. Again, think about how stupid this is. If Jerome Powell even hints to the fact that they might raise interest rates in 2023, people are expecting markets across the globe, all markets, to dump. Do you realize how stupid that is? They might do something in a year, so markets are going to react today. It reminds me of when markets dumped because of the Brexit decision, which everyone knew would take years to come into play. It makes absolutely no sense. And here they're saying, if the Fed remains dovish, retains pro-stimulus bias, cryptocurrencies would have the most upside potential until September at least, given the overselling we've seen relative to other macro markets. Now that's interesting because we have seen more selling in Bitcoin and crypto markets. So if the news is good, basically the idea here is that they would revert to the mean and have much higher to go to do so. The bottom line, guys, global markets are completely manipulated. There is no free market. It's corporate socialism. It's crony capitalism, and it only benefits people who own hard assets. And we all know Bitcoin is the greatest hard asset in the world. It's mathematically scarce and deflationary, and is something that you have to own knowing that they will continue to print money endlessly. Now, let's go into a couple more stories that I find really, really interesting. Whales now hold 48.7% of total Bitcoin supply after buying 90,000 Bitcoin, right? Whales have accumulated 90,000 Bitcoin, number of 100 to 1,000 Bitcoin wallets going up on a steady basis, and minor Bitcoin outflow index plummets. So what this is saying is that the speculators in retail who bought Bitcoin higher have been the ones to sell. We know that it was a liquidation cascade that got us here, and it's still retail that bought higher that seems to be selling into the hands of willing whales. As we know from Warren Buffett, markets are a mechanism for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. Whales are holding and whales are buying, and personally, I would rather be on their team than the one who's a bunch of spastic people that bought $100 worth of Bitcoin at 60,000 and can't stomach the volatility and the drop. Whales have accumulated 90,000 Bitcoins during this phase, and miners have ceased selling. Another story about something similar. New Bitcoin bull market hodlers are refusing to sell at 40K. Those who bought Bitcoin this bull market are in no hurry to sell, says Glassnode, as small-time investor numbers also grow. So we have whales holding their Bitcoin, but we also have the new people that bought lower, not the ones who bought higher, who are holding and refusing to sell at 40,000. People who bought at lower prices earlier in this market believe that prices will continue up. We do have a lot of smart people in the crypto space. Guys, that is it. I will be live today for Chartapalooza at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, looking at charts for the paid subscribers of my newsletter. You can go ahead and subscribe to the newsletter right down below to get your requests in for those Wednesday 2 p.m. streams. Also, check out Femex. They are amazing. Until 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, when I will be live streaming and the Fed will be releasing their nonsensical statement. Peace.